The elderly father regained his sight and seized all the assets when he discovered this.
Hello everyone, enjoy these relaxing moments while you watch.
The Smith family's ivy-covered mansion used to be filled with laughter when Mary was still alive. Now, it had become a cold stage where fake performances were repeated every day. Mr. Edward Smith, 72 years old, had lived in darkness for nearly a decade, ever since a stroke left him completely blind. After his wife's death, he lived quietly in a ground-floor room, accompanied only by an old radio and the distinct smell of damp wood. "I made you some porridge, Dad," Martha's voice rang out sweet as syrup as she placed the tray on the table without bothering to pull out his chair. "Thank you, dear," Edward replied softly, feeling around for the spoon. "Our photo from yesterday got nearly 2,000 likes. The caption, 'My dad is my whole world,' how's that sound? Good, right?" Martha laughed, pulling out her phone and tapping away. Edward gave a small nod, still spooning porridge in silence. Martha Smith, the second daughter, was in her 40s, her face tight with Botox and her lips unnaturally plump. She made a living from social media ads, constantly posting images of herself as the devoted daughter, although in reality she showed up for just a few minutes each day. Moments later, a car engine roared in the driveway. Edward tilted his head. He didn't need to see to know who had arrived. "God damn it, those idiots are calling again about the debt," Charles shouted as he walked in, tossing his coat onto the sofa. "I told them, just a few more weeks and I'll pay." "A few weeks? Gambling again?" Martha sneered. "None of your business." Charles turned to his father, instantly switching tones. "Dad, I'm home. Got you more of that Bordeaux you like?" Edward gave a faint smile. "Good. Thank you, son." Charles, the eldest son, was divorced and drowning in gambling and crypto debts. Around outsiders, he played the role of the dutiful son, but once the doors closed, his true self emerged, unmasked and unapologetic. The afternoon drifted by in gloom. Boston's gray skies mirrored the atmosphere inside the house. At 6 o'clock sharp, the front door opened again. This time it was Danielle, a woman in her late 30s with bouncy curls, a skirt above the knee, and heels clicking cheerfully across the marble floor. "Hello, happy family," she called out with a big smile, taking off her sunglasses. "Brought him again?" Martha scowled. "He has a name, Brian. And I don't need anyone's permission to have a guest in the house I'm living in," Danielle replied with a smug smile. "Or are you just jealous no one's ever kissed you in the living room? You little—" "Enough," Charles cut in. "I just got home and already this." Inside his room, Edward listened. His hearing had sharpened since he lost his sight. He heard everything. Silently. Without reacting. Danielle had once been married to David, Edward's youngest son. After a traffic accident claimed David's life, she moved in with her father-in-law under the pretense of helping care for the grieving widower. But Edward knew what she really wanted: a free roof over her head to live with her lover and occasionally steal antiques to sell. That evening, Adrian returned the only adopted child Edward had ever taken in, from an orphanage when the boy was just 8. "Good evening, Dad. Have you had dinner yet?" Adrian asked gently, unwrapping his scarf and washing his hands. "No. No one said anything today." "That's a shame," Martha called from the other room. "I thought someone was supposed to be so devoted to Dad." Adrian didn't reply. He quietly prepared dinner. "Adrian," Edward called softly. "Yes. Would you read more of Don Quixote tonight?" "Of course. Let me grab the book." The room filled once more with Adrian's warm voice as he read by Edward's side, turning each page with care. Charles occasionally passed by with a mocking grin. Martha was live streaming from her room. Danielle's door was closed, romantic music drifting out from her Bluetooth speaker. Night fell. Outside, snow began to fall. Inside Edward's room, Adrian pulled a blanket over him. I have a shift at the library tomorrow. I'll be back early. All right. Don't let them wear you out. Don't let them take advantage of your kindness. Adrian paused, surprised. Why do you say that? Edward simply shook his head. Just worry, that's all. After Adrian left, Edward lay still, eyes shut. But deep within those eyes, light was returning. He was no longer blind. He hadn't been blind for over a year. One gloomy afternoon more than a year ago, in the sterile white room of Mercy General Hospital, Edward lay still on a hospital bed, quietly listening to the nurse check his IV. "Are you nervous?" asked Dr. Richards, the surgeon in charge, entering the room softly. "It's not nervousness. It's anticipation," Edward replied. "I've waited 10 years for this day. You still want to keep this a secret from your family?" Edward nodded without hesitation. "No one can know. Just say I went on a 3-week retreat. A monastery in Greenwich. They won't care." Dr. Richards frowned slightly. "Even your 3 biological children? Those 3 don't care whether I live or die. But one person, Adrian, he knows nothing. I don't want him to worry. Let everything stay the same." The corneal transplant surgery was conducted in silence. No announcements, no farewells, no good luck kisses. Just the cold glow of the operating room and the old doctor's whisper, "If everything goes as planned, you'll see light within a week." Edward couldn't sleep after surgery. During those days in the hospital, he lay still in darkness not because he was blind, but because it was what he had grown used to. He sighed, thinking of his wife's closed eyes 7 years ago. "Mary, you've seen how they've changed, haven't you?" he whispered into the night. 7 days later, the bandages were removed. Light flooded in, blindingly bright. Edward squinted, then opened his eyes wide. Everything gradually came into focus. The painting on the wall, the vase of flowers, the old clock in the corner, it was all real. "Congratulations," said Dr. Richards with a smile. "You did it." "But now comes the hard part," Edward replied. "I have to go back to being blind." When he returned to the mansion after 3 weeks of spiritual retreat, Edward brought with him new vision but still pretended to stumble with his old wooden cane. "You look healthier," Martha noted, lips red, face tight. "Guess meditation really works, huh?" "Yeah," Edward replied dryly. "Inner peace and all that." Charles patted him on the shoulder. "Enough of that Zen stuff. You're back with us now. We'll take good care of you." "Yes, I'm sure you will," Edward said quietly, but inside, he repeated, "No, it's you I can't trust." None of the 3 children's behavior changed. Martha still barked orders at Adrian like a maid. Charles still lounged on the couch, feet on the table, shouting for hot tea, clean shoes, room service. Danielle still reclined on the sofa, giggling with her lover in the living room. For the first time, Edward saw it all. He began to memorize every detail, every glance, every shrug, every cruel remark. But he remained silent. Still pretended to fumble for teacups. Still let Adrian help him walk. Still let them believe he was a helpless, blind old man. "I'd like to go for a walk," Edward said one crisp autumn morning. Adrian stood up immediately. "I'll come with you." "No. I'd like to go alone." Adrian hesitated. "But the garden path has steps. What if you—" "I'll go slowly. It's fine." From a second-floor window, Martha pulled back the curtain, smirking. "There, now he wants to prove himself." Charles yawned, not even looking up. "As long as he doesn't fall and make me take him to the ER." Outside, Edward walked slowly, eyes scanning each tree and corner. He counted his steps, memorized distances. That afternoon, he secretly installed a small camera under the living room cabinet. Another in the kitchen. One on the ceiling of his room. He had seen, but now, he wanted to record. Do you ever feel like someone's hiding something? Edward asked one evening as Adrian wiped the table. Adrian looked up. Who do you mean, Dad? I don't know. Just, feels like something's off. Adrian sat beside him. If you feel that way, Dad. I trust you have a reason. Edward squeezed his hand. Thank you, son. You've always been the only one who's real in this house. One day, Edward sat still in his room, listening to voices in the kitchen. If Dad dies, the house gets split 3 ways, Charles whispered. You get the front, I'll take the upper floor. As for Danielle, kick her out. What about Adrian? Martha asked. That parasite. If we give him a thank you note, that's more than he deserves. They both burst into laughter. Edward clenched his fist. The veins bulged under his wrinkled skin, but his face remained expressionless. That very night, he called Adrian. Son, can you help me install this in the cabinet corner? He asked, handing over a small camera. You want to install a camera? Yes. Just in case rats start gnawing at things, he replied with a dry chuckle. In case we get some uninvited guests in the house. Adrian didn't ask questions. He simply nodded and did as he was told. From that day on, every night, Edward sat alone, opened his laptop, and quietly watched the recordings. He saw Martha sneaking into his wallet for cash. He saw Charles drinking and smashing the glass on the floor, ordering Adrian to clean it up. He saw Danielle sitting on her lover's lap, whispering sweet nothings on the very sofa where Edward liked to nap. And he remembered every detail. Why is it you, he wondered. Why is the only one without my blood the only one who knows how to love? One night, Adrian came home late after a library shift. Edward heard his hurried footsteps. Dad, I'm sorry I'm late. Was there a package left at the gate? No. I'm fine. Have you eaten? I grabbed some bread. Should I bring you a piece? Edward nodded, then asked softly, if one day, you found out that I could see again, would you be angry? Adrian froze. No. I just ask why you had to pretend to be blind for so long. Because, if I didn't pretend, I wouldn't have seen the truth. That night, Edward didn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, where a camera was recording. Capturing the image of a frail old man, eyes wide open in the dark. The next morning, the kitchen of the Smith mansion echoed with the sound of a knife tapping against a cutting board. Adrian was preparing an omelette, like always. Charles sat lazily at the table, flipping through a newspaper, eyes darting toward the unopened bottle of wine on the shelf. Where's my eggs? You that slow, or just stupid? He snapped. Charles, I'm cooking for everyone, Adrian replied calmly. You're not family, Charles said coldly, dripping with contempt. You're just some orphan Dad picked up. A parasite feeding on his kindness. The words hit like a blade. Edward sat in the living room. His hearing was sharper than any camera. His face remained still, but behind his dark glasses, his eyes flashed with cold fire. Charles. Martha called as she descended the stairs with a smoothie in hand. Can you shut up? I'm live streaming my morning show, The Art of Loving Family, and your barking is killing the vibe. Better a barking dog than a leech, Charles scoffed. At least I'm a real son. A real son, acting like a disgrace, Edward muttered though no one heard it. Martha walked over to the table, pulled out her phone. Where's Daddy? Give me your hand, Dad. Let's film our breakfast with my beloved father clip. Edward reached out, pretending to feel around. Martha instantly turned on selfie mode, beaming, "Good morning, angels. Today I'm starting my day with a warm breakfast alongside my beloved father." Charles chuckled, nudging Martha. "You're the queen of fake." "Better than being broke and chain-smoking," she shot back. "If Dad dies, you'd probably pawn his ashes." Edward took a slow sip of tea, his hand trembling not from age, but rage. That afternoon, Martha barged into his room without knocking. She headed straight for his wardrobe and pulled out his old leather wallet. "Dad," she said sweetly, "I have some expenses today, not really easy to explain." Edward remained seated in his armchair. "You know, Botox is getting expensive. And you wouldn't want your daughter looking wrinkled, would you?" she continued as she took out 3 $50 bills. "Just borrowing. Once I inherit, I'll pay it back." Edward kept up his silent act, but inside, each bill felt like a piece of his trust being shredded. Martha opened the wallet again and found an envelope. "What's this?" she muttered, pulling it out and scanning it quickly. "Mercy General Hospital's routine checkup schedule." She frowned, tore it to pieces, crumpled the paper, and stuffed it into her skirt pocket. "No need for more checkups, Dad. You're not gonna live much longer anyway." Edward heard the paper tearing. It felt like his skin was being clawed open. That evening, Danielle lounged on the couch, legs crossed, phone wedged to her ear, puffing on a vape. "Yeah, babe, I'm free tonight. Adrian just went out to get meds for daddy-in-law. 8 o'clock. I'll wear that black lace dress you like." A deep male voice came through the phone, "Let's meet at that same restaurant. And don't wear much makeup, you're already gorgeous." "You're so sweet," Danielle giggled. "I better hang up before the blind old man hears me." As she turned her head, her gaze met Edward's still blank, as always, as if he hadn't heard a thing. But the truth was, he had heard every word. After dinner, Adrian was carefully cleaning up. Edward called him over. "Adrian, what did Charles say to you in the kitchen today?" Adrian paused, then forced a smile. "Nothing much, Dad. He just got a little hot-headed." "Did it upset you?" "Not really, Dad," Adrian shook his head. "I'm used to it. As long as you're okay, that's all I care about." Edward looked at the slender young man and felt a pang in his heart. "Do you remember your first day here?" "Of course. You hugged me, said, 'Don't be afraid. This is your home now.'" Adrian's voice cracked. Edward said nothing more. He feared that if he spoke, he would cry. That night, he turned on his screen. Living room camera, Charles called Adrian a parasite, a charity case. Kitchen camera, Martha stole money, tore up the hospital letter. Hallway camera, Danielle kissed her lover passionately in the spot where Mary once placed a small crucifix. He recorded every frame, every second. He noted everything in an old black notebook. October 12, Charles insults Adrian. October 13, Martha steals money, destroys hospital letter. October 14, Danielle openly arranges a date at the house. When he finished writing, he closed the notebook and shut his eyes. "Dear God, forgive me, for I will not forgive them." On Saturday night, the mansion was bathed in dim golden light. Outside, a few light raindrops fell. Edward sat alone in his room, pretending to nap in his armchair but actually watching through the laptop hidden under a cushion. A red dot glowed in the corner of the screen the kitchen microphone had activated. The clinking of dishes rang out. Charles opened the liquor cabinet, poured 2 glasses of red wine, and handed one to Martha. "Did you already spike it with something strong?" Martha asked, mockingly. "Not yet. But soon, I'm making something special, for our dear father." Martha looked at Charles, lowering her voice. "I thought you were joking about that." "You think I'm joking? After all these years, have you seen him transfer ownership of anything? This house, his bank accounts, the land in Greenwich, the villa in Miami. You want to wait until he's actually on his deathbed?" Martha swallowed hard, silent. Charles pulled a small vial from his coat pocket. The clear liquid shimmered under the kitchen light. "Heart suppressant," he said, voice low but clear. "Just a few drops in his tea. No one would suspect a thing." The old man already has a history of heart issues. Martha gasped. Where did you get that? A friend of mine works at a private clinic, Charles shrugged. He thought I was suicidal. Fool. I'm not dumb enough to die before I get my inheritance. Martha took a step back. Are you sure it works? Guaranteed, Charles sneered. The best part? He still thinks he's blind. Can't see a damn thing. Edward didn't move. His hands gripped the armrest. His heart pounded like a war drum, but he said nothing. Not yet. It wasn't time. He had to let them expose it all. The next morning, Edward sat at the table for breakfast. Adrian was slicing cantaloupe onto a plate. Would you like chamomile tea, like usual? Adrian asked. No. I want the black tea, the one Charles brought home, Edward said evenly. From the living room, Charles called out, Boo, Father's got a taste for the finer things now. I'll make it right away. Martha glanced at Charles. He nodded subtly. Edward heard everything. Moments later, a steaming cup of tea was brought out. Martha smiled sweetly. Let me stir it for you, Daddy. Edward reached out to take the cup. His hands trembled slightly, his eyes still hidden behind dark glasses. But he didn't drink. Dad, why aren't you drinking? Charles asked. Let it cool a bit. Hot tea can burn the tongue, Edward replied. Old age, my reflexes aren't what they used to be. Adrian glanced at him with concern. Edward gave a subtle nod. He said nothing, but his expression offered quiet reassurance. That night, once everyone had gone to their rooms, Edward opened his laptop and replayed the footage from that morning. He slowed it down at the moment Martha poured something into the tea. Each frame was crystal clear. The small glass vial in Charles's hand. He paused, took a screenshot, and saved it in a folder labeled Evidence. Then he picked up his phone and dialed a long-saved number, Lawyer Wilson. Hello. Wilson, it's me. Edward. Good Lord, you're calling directly. It's been ages. Your eyes. I can see again. But I'm still keeping it a secret. What's going on? It must be serious. I need you to prepare a new will. And a criminal complaint file. I'll send all the digital evidence to your secure email. Wilson's tone grew serious. Does this involve your 3 children? Yes. I won't let them kill me and then cry crocodile tears for the cameras. Are you sure you're ready to see this through? I'm sure. I've seen enough. But I want them to keep believing I'm blind, weak. When they least expect it. I'll pull the trigger. On Monday morning, Martha opened her father's door and saw him sleeping, or so she thought. She tiptoed in and took out a red envelope from her pocket. Here's a little something for your upcoming birthday, she whispered, placing it on the table. But instead of money, inside was a flyer for a cosmetic clinic. She smirked and turned to leave. But before she reached the door, Edward spoke. Martha. She flinched. Dad, you're awake. Why didn't you put that in my hand instead of sneaking it onto the table? I didn't want to disturb you. Next time, knock before coming in, Edward said, still with his eyes closed. Yes, sorry, Dad, Martha murmured, visibly unsettled as she left. She couldn't shake the eerie feeling. Did he see something? Or not yet? That afternoon, Danielle sat in the kitchen, eating grapes and talking on the phone. No, baby. We can't move in together just yet. Wait until Edward goes. Then I'll get David's share and we'll leave the country. A man's voice came through, and if you don't get that share, I will. Trust me. That old man won't last past this winter. Edward recorded the entire call. That evening, Adrian knocked on the door. Dad, I bought some of your favorite flan. Thank you, son. Just leave it on the table. As Adrian entered and set the plate down, he froze. Dad, why are you staring at the computer screen? Edward remained silent. On the screen, a video of Charles and Martha plotting his murder played clearly. I don't understand, Adrian stammered. Edward looked directly at him for the first time, not pretending to be blind. I've been able to see, Adrian. For 3 months now. Adrian stood still, his hands slack by his side. I didn't say anything, because I was afraid I'd cry. Sunday morning, the mansion buzzed with pop music and fake laughter. Martha stood in the middle of the living room wearing a sparkly headband that read "Happy Birthday Daddy," holding a mini Bluetooth microphone. She was live streaming while constantly glancing at her phone. Over 800 viewers were tuned in. Hello my angels. Today is the birthday of my father, the most amazing man on the planet. And I, his one and only loving daughter, have planned a super cozy party just for him. She leaned over and kissed Edward on the cheek. He sat still in the armchair, his face blank like a statue. How do you feel, Daddy? Martha whispered, mic still on. I know you're so touched, aren't you? Edward gave a small nod, his eyes behind the sunglasses fixed on a blank space in front of him. Each of her touches felt like a snake wrapping around his neck. Charles came down from upstairs wearing a white dress shirt, hair slicked back, holding a champagne glass. Happy birthday, he said mockingly. Let's hope this is the last year you have to suffer in blindness. Ha ha ha. Martha laughed loudly, though no one else seemed amused. Charles turned toward the camera, nodding like a TV host. We are a complete, loving family. My father, the silent hero. And us, his devoted children, always giving him our hearts. Edward said nothing. He was disgusted. The birthday party lasted nearly 2 hours. Few people attended, mostly Martha's online followers and a few of Charles's colleagues, more out of debt than affection. Adrian wasn't present. He'd been sent to retrieve heart medication and medical supplies for Edward downtown. When the party ended, Martha threw the leftover cake in the trash. Took over 100 pictures. Should be enough content for next week. Charles nodded. I'll send the one of me standing behind Dad's chair. Something like, the man guiding the next generation. Martha laughed. You really are the king of fake. Edward heard everything via the kitchen camera. That evening, rain began to fall. Adrian returned, soaked through his raincoat, carrying a bag of medicine and a bouquet of white roses. He stepped into the living room and saw the party mess still scattered about. Was there something special today? Adrian asked. Oh, Martha muttered lazily. Dad's birthday. But no big deal, just a photo op. You didn't need to know. Charles elbowed Martha. Come on, he's a member of the family, remember? Martha shrugged and smirked. Adrian approached Edward and gently placed the bouquet in his lap. I'm sorry I wasn't here in time. I brought the meds you needed, and a little gift. Edward touched the petals and murmured, Thank you, son. They're beautiful. They don't have to be flashy, just real. Charles yawned and walked off. I've got a call. Might have to head to Miami tomorrow for a meeting. You still have money for business trips? Martha sneered. Sure. Pawned my old wedding ring, he replied, smirking as he climbed the stairs. That night, as Adrian prepared milk for Edward, jazz music drifted from the living room. Danielle the widowed squatter appeared in a deep red silk dress with a slit up to her thigh. Is he here yet? She asked Martha, spraying perfume on her wrists. Not yet. But close the front door. If the old man hears unfamiliar footsteps, he'll think it's a burglar. He's blind, Danielle scoffed. Never seen a blind man so nosy. The door opened. A tall man with cropped hair and a black shirt walked in. Brian. Danielle exclaimed, rushing over to hug him right in the middle of the living room. They kissed passionately like they were at a Maldives resort, not in the house of her dead husband's father. Martha glared. Do you have to lay it on so thick? Jealous? Danielle snorted. At least I love for real, not just for social media. Well, at least I don't sleep with guys in my dead husband's house, Martha hissed. Edward was sitting in his room, watching it all on camera. His eyes were filled with pain more than fury. Not jealousy, shame. The kind of shame his late wife Mary would feel if she could see this. Danielle drew the curtains, turned on the warm yellow lights, and poured 2 glasses of wine. Brian, sit here. I want to hear more about your company's project. Business talk gets me so turned on. Brian chuckled. Well, I'm already turned on. They clinked glasses and giggled. Adrian came down the stairs and froze. Danielle looked up. Oh. I thought you were gone. You know I'm here taking care of Dad. Adrian's voice was cold. So what? You play babysitter for a blind man while I live like a real woman, she said, standing and draping her arm over Brian's shoulder. Where are you going? Brian asked. Adrian looked at them in silence for a moment, then said softly, I'm going to check the camera system. Danielle stiffened slightly, startled. Cameras? Brian frowned. It's nothing, Danielle said quickly. Probably just for security. Nothing in this house worth stealing anyway. Adrian didn't respond. He gave a small nod and walked away. Danielle watched him go, eyes narrowing. Late that night, Edward sat in front of his screen. He didn't cry. He wasn't angry. But his face resembled an old stone worn down by years of wind and rain, bare, weathered, hollow. He rewound the footage of Martha blowing kisses at the camera. Of Charles pretending to pour a celebratory drink when Edward knew exactly what was really in that glass. Of Danielle snuggling into her lover's neck, laughing hysterically in the very room where her late husband used to sit and read every evening. Edward opened his notebook. November 25th, Martha live-streamed the birthday. Never asked if I wanted it. November 25th, Danielle brought her lover home. In front of me. November 25th, Adrian bought medicine and brought flowers. No one mentioned him at the party. He set the pen down and stared into nothing. That night, rain pattered against the glass roof of the hallway. The lights outside blurred through the storm, casting a ghostly glow that hinted at something grim on the horizon. Charles stood by the liquor shelf, swirling amber whiskey in a glass. He had just lost a bet over the phone and shouted in frustration. God damn it, the New England Patriots lost to the freaking Miami Dolphins. If I find out that bookie scammed me, I'll break his neck. Adrian quietly wiped the floor nearby, gathering shards of glass from the drink Charles had already broken. Charles turned, taking out his anger. Hey! Parasite! Clean that up. You think this is some Buddhist temple? Yes, I'm cleaning it, Adrian replied, keeping his voice calm. You talking back now? Charles hurled the second glass to the ground, shattering it across the floor. Adrian flinched but still knelt to pick up each shard. Martha came down the stairs, holding a jewelry box. What the hell is with all the yelling? This little shit broke my glass. Charles barked, pointing at Adrian. You threw it. Adrian retorted for the first time in months. You worthless trash. You dare talk back. Charles roared. Martha looked around, then suddenly shrieked, Where's my Rolex? I left it on the shelf next to the bonsai. What? Charles snapped his head toward her, eyes wide. I swear I saw it this morning. It can't just vanish, she shouted. She turned to Adrian, venom in her stare. You were the last one cleaning there. I didn't take anything. Adrian stepped back. Sure, no one took it, and it just vanished. Charles yelled, lunging at Adrian and punching him hard in the chest. Charles! Stop! Adrian cried, raising his arm to defend himself, but too late. Another punch struck his face, and he fell, his head hitting the edge of the table. Blood trickled down Adrian's forehead. Are you crazy? Martha screamed. You could have killed him. Charles panted, fists clenched. He deserved it. Ask yourself how long he's lived here without paying a single damn cent. I didn't steal anything. Adrian said weakly, trying to sit up. If I find that watch for sale online, Charles snarled, you'll end up in a damn hospital bed. Get out. Both of you. A deep, gravelly voice cut through the chaos. Everyone froze. Edward stood in the doorway. No cane. No one supporting him. His eyes locked on Charles, blazing with fury. Dad! Dad, Charles stammered. Edward walked slowly to Adrian, knelt beside him, and gently wiped the blood from his forehead with a handkerchief. Adrian was frozen, unable to meet his gaze. Are you all right? Edward asked, voice low and firm. I'm okay, Adrian murmured, holding back tears. Edward turned to Charles, eyes boring into him. How dare you hit someone in my house? Charles stammered, I thought you couldn't see. Yes. You thought. Everyone thought. Edward straightened, his voice glacial. But from now on, stop thinking. Martha stepped in, trying to salvage the moment. Dad, it's just, my watch was missing, and... That watch? You sold it 2 weeks ago. I have the PayPal withdrawal receipt. Want to keep pretending? The room went silent. Edward looked at both of them. I've kept quiet long enough. But if you ever lay a hand on Adrian again, I swear, even if I have to crawl from hell, I will drag you with me. Charles backed away, sweat forming at his temples. Edward turned, helping Adrian to his feet. Come on, son. Let's go. I'll clean your wound. Later that night, Adrian sat on his bed, pressing a cold towel to his head. He couldn't sleep. His eyes were red, heart heavy. A soft knock echoed on his door. Come in, he whispered. Edward entered, holding a small first aid kit. I brought some medicine. Let me take care of that cut. Dad. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to stir up trouble. I know. That's why it hurts. Adrian's voice trembled. I don't understand, why do they hate me so much? Because you exist like a mirror. A mirror that reflects the rot inside them. And you've kept your heart clean. Edward gently applied antiseptic to the cut. His hands trembled, but his eyes were steady. You once said, you didn't expect anything from me, Edward said quietly. But starting tomorrow, you'll receive everything. Adrian looked up, confused. You just need to be patient a little longer. Justice is coming. Don't be afraid. Edward placed a hand on his shoulder. For the first time, he embraced Adrian like a true father. In the living room, Charles slammed the table in rage. God damn it. How is he walking around on his own? Doesn't anyone find that weird? Martha sat nearby, pale. He looked straight at you, Charles. And his eyes, they weren't blind. You think, he's been faking? Charles growled. And if he was, then he knows everything. Silence swept through the room. Only the ticking clock remained, each tick like a countdown to the storm ahead. Tomorrow, Edward whispered. Tomorrow is the last day of silence. Night settled over the Smith mansion in a bone-chilling early winter calm. The rain had stopped, but puddles still shimmered on the driveway, reflecting the light from the second-floor window where Edward sat alone, back against his chair, an old laptop before him, now fitted with a new hard drive. He took a deep breath, then opened folder after folder: kitchen, living room, hallway, Adrian's body cam, audio log, kitchen 11/14. Everything was crystal clear. Every fake smile. Every poisonous word. He rewound the clip of Martha grabbing money from his wallet, of Charles dripping poison into his tea, of Danielle sitting on her lover's lap, of Adrian collapsing, blood staining the floor beside his own eldest son's shoes. Edward placed his hand on the mouse, clicked compile. He dragged the clips into a simple video editor. It was clumsy at first. But within minutes, each scene was stitched together, time-stamped. The title appeared on the screen. The Truth About the Smith Family: 90 Days in Darkness. His hands trembled. But his eyes were no longer blind. No longer clouded. There was a soft knock at the door. "Come in," he said. Adrian walked in, carrying a cup of warm milk. "I figured you hadn't gone to sleep yet." Edward turned and smiled. "You're right. There's something I need to finish." Adrian set the cup down on the table. "Is there anything I can help with?" "Yes," Edward said softly. "You can sit here, and listen to what I have to say." Adrian blinked. "You're going to tell me something?" "Yes. But it's not a happy story." Edward opened his black notebook and turned to the final page. Under the golden light, his handwriting was shaky but firm. "Tomorrow, I'm calling a family meeting. I'm going to tell them everything." Adrian's eyes widened. "Dad, are you really going to expose everything?" Edward nodded. "Not out of anger. But because I can't let evil disguised as family live comfortably in this house for one more day. I don't know what to say," Adrian choked. "Don't say anything. Just, when I begin tomorrow, I want you to stand beside me." Adrian was silent for a moment. Then he nodded. "I will. No matter what the consequences are." Edward slowly stood, placing a hand on Adrian's shoulder. "Tomorrow, you'll know everything. And tomorrow, you'll no longer be just the adopted son." Midnight. Martha sat in her room, intently editing photos on her phone. "These eye bags need to be blurred a little. This filter makes my lips look more seductive." Her phone rang. "Charles? You awake?" "Yeah. What is it?" "I don't know. Ever since the old man started walking on his own, I've had a bad feeling. Do you think, could he be seeing again?" Martha paused, lowering her phone. Her voice grew serious. "No way. If he could, why wouldn't he say something?" "Because he's setting a trap." Martha swallowed hard. "You mean, he knows everything?" "Maybe. I've seen him at his computer some nights. When I walked in, he quickly shut it off like he was hiding something." "Shit," Martha muttered, clutching her head. "If he really knows, we're screwed." "Not necessarily. I'll try to feel him out in the morning. If I'm right, we strike first." Martha said nothing. "Listen to me, Martha. You and I, if we don't act clean and fast, will be eating prison food." She whispered, "Yeah. I get it." In Danielle's room, she lay with her head on Brian's chest, gently tracing her fingers along his arm. "I'm about to come into money. A lot of it." Brian opened his eyes. "From where?" "Edward's inheritance. My late father-in-law. It's close. All we need is for him to go soon." Brian chuckled. "Don't let your sister hear you. She'd sell you out." "She wouldn't dare. I've still got that clip of her kissing her old boss before the divorce." "You're dangerous," Brian smirked. "And sexy." Danielle giggled. "And tomorrow, might be the last day I have to look at that old man's face." They kissed again, unaware that their conversation was being saved in a video file labeled Sofa Cam 102 AM. In Edward's room, the USB finished saving the final data. He pulled it out and slipped it into a pre-sealed yellow envelope labeled to Attorney Raymond Wilson. Urgent will plus criminal evidence. He placed the envelope on the table, tucked beneath an old photo, Edward, Mary, and their 3 children when they were young. The image was faded, but Mary's smile remained clear. You see now, Mary, he whispered. They've all shown their true faces. Tomorrow, I'll bring them into the light. Outside the window, the wind stirred the pine trees. Cold, but Edward no longer felt cold inside. He pressed shut down on the laptop and looked over at Adrian, who had fallen asleep on the armchair. Sleep well, son, he murmured. Tomorrow, you'll wake up in a new family. One without lies. He pulled a blanket over Adrian, then sat back in his chair and stared out into the dark garden. The moon was hidden by clouds. But inside him, dawn had already begun. The next morning, the Smith mansion gleamed in the soft light after the night's rain. A breeze drifted through the ancient pines, and the air felt unusually fresh as if something long rotting was about to be purged. Edward woke early. He dressed himself a charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, and a gray silk scarf embroidered by his late wife. Today, he didn't need Adrian's help. He stood, steady and slow, opened the wardrobe, and retrieved the documents he'd prepared the night before. In the living room, he set up a laptop connected to a large screen. The screen was still off, but the video file titled "The Truth About the Smith Family" was queued and ready. Footsteps echoed on the stairs. Dad, what's this urgent meeting about? Charles yawned, scratching his head. I thought you wanted to rest this morning. Martha followed behind, bright red lipstick, coffee cup in hand. Dad, I've got a Zoom meeting with Korea in 15 minutes. Can we hurry this up? No, Edward replied sharply. Sit down. Danielle wandered in next, wearing a silk robe over a short nightdress. Thought the old man had died. Guess he's still kicking. Sit, Edward repeated, his voice calm but firm. The 3 exchanged glances. Something felt off. Adrian stood silently to the side, face expressionless. Edward braced himself on the table, then for the first time in over a decade he walked to the center of the room unassisted. Charles straightened in shock. Martha dropped her coffee cup, spilling it on the floor. Danielle stumbled backward into the sofa. What the? Dad, you can see. Charles stammered. Edward nodded, eyes scanning his children. For 3 months now. Silence fell like a hammer. Martha was the first to speak. So, all those times I changed clothes in the living room, you saw. Not just saw, Edward said, reaching to turn on the screen. The large monitor flickered to life. A video played, Charles pouring something into Edward's tea. His voice rang out clearly, heart suppressant. Just a few drops and that's it. Next, Martha's voice, I've waited long enough to inherit. Then Danielle, as soon as he dies, I'll get the money. Then we'll move to Italy together. Charles turned pale. Martha gasped for breath. Danielle trembled. This is fake. Charles shouted. This was recorded in this house from cameras I installed, Edward said coldly. There are also audio files, transaction receipts, text messages, and witness statements. We didn't know. You tricked us. Martha screamed. No one tricked anyone. I only pretended to be blind, so I could see who truly cared. Edward turned to Adrian. And you? I saw you get hit, insulted, humiliated, but still quietly take care of me every day. Adrian looked at him, eyes red, but refusing to cry. Danielle's voice cracked. What are you going to do? Edward pulled a thick file from his briefcase and slammed it on the table. These are full copies of the evidence. One set has already been sent to Attorney Wilson. Another is with the district attorney's office. Everything will proceed under the law. You can't do this. Charles howled. We're your children. No, Edward said firmly. From the moment you plotted to kill your father, you ceased to be my children. Martha shot up. We've taken care of you for years. And that leech, he's just a freeloader. Freeloader? Edward stepped forward, eyes blazing. He bathed me every night. He cooked my meals. He read to me, got my medicine, picked up every pebble in the yard so I wouldn't trip. And you? You didn't take care of me, you performed for an audience. Danielle sobbed. I didn't kill anyone. I just brought your lover into the house of your dead husband. Kissed him on the sofa where my wife once sat embroidering. You defiled Mary's final piece. Edward pulled out one final envelope. This is the new will. Notarized 3 days ago. He opened it and read aloud. I, Edward Smith, being of sound mind and body, hereby declare. All assets including the mansion, 3 properties in Greenwich, savings accounts, and company shares totaling $4 million shall be transferred entirely to Adrian Smith. Charles Smith, Martha Smith, and Danielle Lobo are permanently disinherited. The 3 froze, speechless. Charles lunged toward the table. No. You can't. I'm the eldest son. Adrian stepped in front of him immediately. Edward held him back and looked Charles dead in the eyes. Eldest son. The eldest son who conspired to murder his father. Who called his brother a parasite. You're not worthy of that title. You've been brainwashed by him. Martha hissed. He's using you. Using me? Edward looked at her, his eyes wet not from pain, but from sheer disappointment. You used social media to craft a fake image of a loving daughter, while stealing my money, tearing up my hospital letters. Did you think I didn't know? None of them could say a word. Once more, Edward looked at Adrian. He raised his hand and placed it firmly on his shoulder. You may not share my blood, but you carry my heart. Adrian fell to his knees, unable to hold back his tears. I never thought I'd actually be called a real son. You don't have to think anymore, Edward said. You are my only son. That scene, a once blind father standing tall, placing his hand on his adopted son's shoulder while the 3 others stood frozen, was the rightful end to a long chain of lies. Through the window, sunlight poured in for the first time in many years. The atmosphere in the Smith mansion's living room was frozen in time. Edward stood in the center, his back straight, eyes fixed on the 3 people who had once called him father. Adrian still knelt at his feet, his face soaked with tears. Not for the money. But because he had finally been recognized. Finally called son. Edward leaned down and helped Adrian to his feet. Stand up, my son. No one has the right to make you bow your head in this house anymore. Adrian trembled. I still can't believe this is real. It's real. And it's the best decision I've ever made. Across the room, Charles still hadn't recovered from the shock. He stood like he was nailed to the floor, his face flushed with rage. He suddenly shouted. You can't disinherit us. The law doesn't allow it. On the contrary, Edward replied coldly, the law fully allows it when there's clear evidence of abuse, threats, and intent to kill in order to inherit. He pulled out another set of documents from his leather briefcase. This is the official complaint filed with the Boston court, including all evidence, video, audio recordings, statements from the staff here, and even the medical report of the heart medication you intended to use to kill me. Martha screamed, you're destroying the lives of your own children. No, Edward said firmly. You destroyed your own lives when you treated your father like a breathing safe. Danielle burst into tears, covering her face. I didn't want to live in poverty anymore. And so you brought your lover into the home of your late husband? And you still think you deserve a cent from me? She wailed, I was your daughter-in-law. I've been here since David died. And since that day, You've lived in this house like a parasite, brought your lover in, drank wine in the room where my wife used to keep a picture of your late husband. No one could argue anymore. Charles growled, "We'll sue." Edward smiled faintly. "You're free to try. But my lawyer is Raymond Wilson, with 30 years of experience in inheritance litigation. I suggest you prepare well." Martha let out a bitter laugh. "So it all goes to him?" She glared at Adrian with resentment. "Yes," Edward said calmly. "Everything goes to Adrian. This mansion, the savings, the land, and the last of my memories." Adrian shook his head, tears streaming again. "I never wanted anything from you. Just knowing you were healthy was enough for me." Edward grasped his hand, his own eyes moist. "But you deserve everything. Not because you asked for it, but because you gave everything quietly, lovingly." "Dad, if you say that, I'm going to break down." "Then sit," Edward chuckled. "Because today, my legs are tired too." Adrian laughed through his tears, and the two of them sat on the sofa for the first time as a real family. That afternoon, attorney Raymond Wilson arrived at the mansion with the officially notarized will and the legal files submitted to the court. After reviewing and signing the documents, he shook Edward's hand. "You did the right thing," Raymond said. "Few people have the courage to face the truth in their own family." "I had to pretend to be blind to truly see the light," Edward replied quietly. Raymond turned to Adrian. "From now on, all documents will be in your name. Congratulations, Adrian Smith." Adrian stammered, "I don't even know how to thank you." "Just keep living kindly, as you always have," Edward said, placing a hand on his shoulder. The lawyer departed. The air in the house settled again, not heavy, but peaceful. Charles, Martha, and Danielle sat huddled in the old dining room. No one spoke. Their faces were ghostly pale. Suddenly, as if waking from a trance, Charles stood abruptly. "We have to leave. Staying here any longer is humiliating." "But, where will we go?" Martha whispered. "We have no money. Then we borrow. I'll call George from the bar. He owes me from last time." Danielle sighed, exhausted. "We have nothing. No home. No money. No dignity." Adrian appeared in the doorway, holding an envelope. "Here's $300. My personal savings. You should leave today." Martha shot up. "I'm not taking a damn cent from you." "Then don't," Adrian said. "But if you don't want to be forcibly removed by police, I suggest you leave before 6 p.m., as per the order signed earlier." The three of them froze. Charles muttered, "You damn snakes. You'll regret this." Adrian looked at him, not with anger, but calm resolve. "I don't need to remember. Everything's been recorded." Charles looked ready to lunge, but Edward stepped in holding his cane. For the first time, he used it not to find his way, but to stop a disgraceful man in his tracks. "If you take one more step, I'll call the police." Charles stayed frozen, then turned and stormed out. Danielle quietly wheeled her suitcase across the tiled floor. Martha was the last to leave. Before opening the door, she turned back. "You'll regret this, Dad. When no one's left beside you." "I have Adrian," Edward replied. "And I made that choice." The door shut with a soft click, but the sound echoed like a final period on a rotting chapter of life. That night, Adrian set the table outside in the garden. White roses were in bloom. Sparrows flitted through the trellis. Edward sat in a wheelchair, wrapped in a warm sweater, his expression serene. "I made some fish soup, your favorite," Adrian smiled. "And a bottle of red wine, just half a glass." Edward frowned, pretending to scold him. "The doctor said I should avoid. But the lawyer said today's a special occasion." They both laughed. Later, Adrian pushed Edward through the garden for a walk. The leaves rustled. The scent of damp soil mixed with floral perfume. Do you regret it? Adrian asked softly. No. The price of truth is always high. But I'm willing to pay it. Only then can we truly live. Adrian held his hand. I don't know if I can ever be as good a man as you. You already are better than I am, Edward said gently. You don't carry my blood, but you carry my heart. That's all that matters. They fell silent. Overhead, the sunset bathed the clouds in gold. Edward looked to the sky. For the first time in years, there was no darkness in his soul. Dad, Adrian said softly. I think I can finally start living again. Yes. And let it begin with a simple dinner, filled with love. The two of them sat together, with no more words needed. Because real love doesn't require many words. It just needs to be present. Like light. Like truth. It is not blood that makes a family, but love, loyalty, and kindness. You can wear a mask to deceive a blind man, but you can't hide your nature from time and the patience of truth. When greed overtakes morality, the price is not just wealth lost but humanity, too. And in the end, light only comes when we dare to face the darkness, even when that darkness lives inside our own family.
If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.